The applause hadn't even settled when Daniel cleared his throat. It was our annual company gala. Crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, a stage framed in gold. I was still standing beside him, holding the glass award I had just received for 10 years of service and excellence. I remember the weight of it in my hand. Heavy. Earned. Before we move on, Daniel said into the microphone, smiling in that controlled, executive way, there's actually something else we need to address. The room shifted. I felt it before I understood it. He turned to me, not fully, just enough to make it public. Margaret, he continued, unfortunately, due to recent internal findings, we've decided to terminate your position. Effective immediately. A ripple of gasps. Someone dropped a glass. My name echoed across tables in whispers. I didn't move. Daniel gestured toward HR, already standing at the side with a folder. Prepared. Clean. Efficient. Humiliating. Security will assist, he added, softer now, but still amplified. I placed the award down on the podium. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. I was hoping, I said calmly, you'd choose tonight. And that was when his smile faltered. I didn't open the envelope. Not yet. Instead, I placed it beside the award, aligning both carefully as if they belonged together. The symbolism wasn't accidental. Daniel recovered quickly. He always did. Margaret, he said, lowering his voice though the microphone still caught every word. This isn't the time. It's exactly the time, I replied. Soft. Even. The kind of voice that doesn't beg to be heard, but is. The room had gone still in that uncomfortable way people do when they realize they're witnessing something they weren't meant to. HR hesitated. Security didn't move. Good. I'll leave, I continued, but I think everyone here deserves clarity. Don't you? A few people nodded before catching themselves. Daniel's jaw tightened. You've always valued transparency, I added, watching him carefully. That word. Transparency. His word. His policy. His branding. His trap. And, ultimately, his mistake. I suggest, I said, resting my fingers lightly on the envelope, we follow your own rules tonight. For a brief second I saw it. Not anger. Not authority. But calculation. He was trying to figure out what I knew. And how much damage it could do. 6 months earlier, I had still believed in Daniel. That was my first mistake. The second was assuming that loyalty, 10 years of it, meant protection. I discovered the discrepancy on a Tuesday evening. Nothing dramatic. Just numbers that didn't align. I worked in corporate finance long enough to know that errors have patterns. This didn't. It was deliberate. Small amounts. Spread across quarters. Routed through subsidiaries that most people in the company didn't even know existed. But I did. Because I helped build them. I didn't confront him. I didn't even react. I copied the files, stored them externally, and went home like nothing had happened. That night I didn't sleep. Not because I was shocked, but because I understood exactly what I was looking at, and what it meant. Daniel wasn't just manipulating numbers. He was preparing for something. A move. An exit. Or a fall. The question wasn't whether he would betray someone. It was who. By the next morning I had already decided. If I was going to survive this, I needed to be 3 steps ahead. The envelope remained unopened. That was intentional. Control isn't just about what you reveal. It's about what you withhold. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice further. What do you think you're doing? He asked. Protecting the company, I said simply. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. That wasn't the answer he expected. Behind him, I noticed Clara, our legal advisor, watching closely. Her posture had shifted. Alert now. Good. I think, Daniel said, forcing a smile for the audience, we should continue this privately. Of course, I replied. Right after we confirm one thing. I turned, not to him, but to the room. To everyone here, I said, I apologize for the interruption. But if I'm being dismissed for misconduct, I believe it's fair to clarify the nature of that misconduct. Murmurs again. Pressure. Public pressure. The one thing Daniel hated. He thrived on control, but not in chaos. What exactly, I continued, looking back at him, am I being accused of? There it was. A simple question, but a dangerous one, because accusations require details, and details can be examined. Daniel hesitated, just for a second, but I saw it. And so did Clara. Financial negligence, he said finally. Failure to comply with internal protocols.
Vague. Safe.
Cowardly. I see, I nodded. And this conclusion was based on what audit? Silence. He hadn't expected questions. Not here. Not now. We'll provide documentation, he said quickly. Please do, I replied, because I'd like to compare it with mine. That shifted the room again. The word mine. Ownership. Authority. Danger. Daniel's eyes narrowed. What documentation? He asked. I slid the envelope slightly forward, but still didn't open it. The kind that doesn't disappear, I said. That was when the room stopped breathing, because everyone in that space understood what I was implying. Not incompetence, not negligence, but something far worse. Daniel took a step back. It was subtle, but it was the first time that night he had moved away from me. And in power dynamics, that matters. 6 months is a long time when you're patient. Long enough to build a case. Long enough to watch someone make mistakes. Long enough to let them believe they're winning. I didn't act immediately because I needed certainty. Not suspicion. Not instinct. Proof. I hired an external forensic accountant under a consulting pretense. Quiet. Discreet. Expensive. Worth it. We traced the transactions together. Layer by layer. Account by account. What we found wasn't just manipulation. It was strategy. Daniel had been redirecting funds through shell vendors, entities tied indirectly back to him through intermediaries. Clean enough to avoid casual detection. Sloppy enough for someone like me to notice. But the real revelation came later. He wasn't just taking money. He was positioning the company for a controlled failure. Lower reported earnings. Trigger valuation adjustments. Create an opportunity to buy back shares at a reduced price. And then, recover. Profit. Walk away. It was elegant, calculated, ruthless, and he assumed no one would see it. That was his third mistake. Open it, Clara said quietly. Not to Daniel.
To me.
Interesting. I met her eyes. She wasn't panicked. She was curious. That told me everything I needed to know. She suspected something, but didn't have proof. Not yet. I slid my finger under the seal.
Slowly.
Deliberately. Every movement measured. Inside were 3 documents. I placed the first one on the podium. A financial report. The second. Transaction logs. The third. A shareholder agreement. That one stayed in my hand. Before we review these, I said, I think it's important we establish something first. I turned slightly, letting the room see my face fully now. Daniel, I said calmly, how much of this company do you believe I own? Confusion. That was the reaction. Not just from him. From everyone. Because in their minds I was an employee. A senior one, yes. But still. Replaceable. Daniel frowned. This isn't relevant, he said. I smiled. It's the only thing that's relevant. And for the first time that night, I watched uncertainty take hold. 10 years ago, when the company was struggling, Daniel needed capital. Not from banks. Not from investors. From someone who understood the business. Someone who wouldn't interfere. Someone who believed in him. That someone was me. I didn't give him money. I invested it. Quietly. Legally. Through a structure he barely questioned because he was too focused on survival. Back then it was 15%. Significant. But not controlling. Over time, I increased it. Small increments. Strategic buys. Reinvested dividends. Silent acquisitions when early partners exited. By the time Daniel stabilized the company, I owned 30%. He knew I had shares. He just never knew how much. Because he never asked. Because he never thought I mattered enough to ask. That was his fourth mistake. I own 30% of this company, I said. No emphasis. No dramatics. Just fact. The reaction was immediate. Gasps. Whispers. Chairs shifting. Daniel didn't speak. He couldn't. Because in that moment, everything recalibrated. I wasn't being dismissed. I was being challenged. Legally. Publicly. Recklessly. That makes this, I continued, gesturing lightly to the room, not just a termination, but a board-level issue. Clara stepped forward, now fully engaged. Is that accurate? She asked Daniel. He didn't answer, because he couldn't lie. Not here.
Not now.
I placed the shareholder agreement on the podium. Section 4.2, I said. Any termination of a stakeholder holding over 20% requires board review and documented cause. Silence.
Heavy.
Final. And I don't recall, I added softly, attending that meeting. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It never does. It begins with doubt. Visible. Contagious. Daniel tried to regain control. We'll review this internally, he said quickly. Of course, I nodded. Along with the financial discrepancies. There it was.
The shift. Now it wasn't about me. It was about him.
Clara picked up the financial report. Her expression changed as she scanned it.
Subtle.
But unmistakable. This needs immediate review, she said. Not to me.
To him.
Authority had moved.
Just like that.
I agree, I replied. And then I stepped back. Because my role in that moment wasn't to push. It was to let the system do what it was designed to do. Expose. Investigate.
Correct.
Daniel wasn't being attacked. He was being examined. And that was far worse. The next morning, everything changed. Access revoked. Not mine.
His.
The board convened an emergency session. I wasn't emotional walking in. I was prepared. There's a difference. Clara sat across from me. This time, not as an observer, but as a participant. We've reviewed the initial documents, she said. We'll need full cooperation. You'll have it, I replied. Daniel arrived late. Uncharacteristic. Unsettled. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked uncertain. That's how power shifts. Not loudly, but visibly. The investigation unfolded methodically. No accusations. Just facts. Transactions traced. Accounts verified. Timelines established. Daniel denied everything at first. Naturally. Then selectively.
Strategically.
Until the pattern became undeniable. That's when silence replaced defense. And silence, in those rooms, speaks louder than words. Financial restrictions came first. Access to accounts frozen. Authority suspended. Not punishment. Procedure. But the effect was the same.
Control gone.
Then came reputation. Rumors spread quietly at first. Then faster. Executives talk, even when they pretend not to. And Daniel's name, once synonymous with leadership, became associated with risk. His personal life followed. His partner, someone I had met only twice, requested space. Translation. Distance. From uncertainty. From scandal. From him. Professionally, the fallout deepened. Speaking engagements canceled. Invitations withdrawn. Positions reconsidered. Not publicly, but effectively. Doors don't always slam. Sometimes they just stop opening. Socially, the circle tightened. Then fractured. People who once aligned with him. Repositioned. Quietly. Carefully. No one wants to be attached to instability. Legally, the case solidified. Evidence submitted. Timelines confirmed. Intent established. This was an error. It was design. The board removed him. Unanimously.
Clean.
Final. The courtroom was quieter than the gala. Less dramatic. More decisive. The evidence spoke.
Clearly. Completely. He lost.
Not dramatically. Not loudly. But absolutely. I didn't attend his final hearing.
I didn't need to.
Closure doesn't require presence. Only certainty. 3 months later, I moved offices. Not as an employee, but as a partner. Visible. Acknowledged. Respected. I restructured the finance division. Tightened controls. Strengthened oversight. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. A year later, the company was stronger.
So was I.
Not because I won, but because I understood. Power isn't in titles or perception. It's in preparation.
and patience.
and knowing exactly when to open the envelope. Because in the end, I didn't just protect the company. I reclaimed the part of myself that I had once mistaken for loyalty.